And welcome back. Here we have with us our two representatives from the Institute for Multi-Track Diplomacy. Reverend Karen Dickman is a mediator conflict professional with extensive restorative justice experience working with people with AIDS, mental illness, ex-offenders, victims of violent crimes, and jails and prisons. And we also have Kevin LaFleur, Program Coordinator at the Institute of Multi-Track Diplomacy. The website, by the way, is IMTD.org.
Right.
Some basic questions about your organization, its leadership, your role in conflict resolution. What are some of the challenges of a non-governmental organization or an NGO?
Well, I think that all NGOs at this particular time in history, especially in the field of peace building, always face a problem of funding, and so that's a constant effort for us is to go find funding. But the beauty of being an NGO is that we had no ties to anyone, including actually to specific funders, although that allow us to be limited by nothing more than our creativity, so that we are able to bring a broad spectrum picture and imagination to every problem. When there is an obstacle, it's only an obstacle that allows us to try to figure out a creative way around and over and through it. So that there is no such thing to us as failure in any program. It means that we just have to figure out a way to be more creative. And that's our only limit, and that's a wonderful thing.
Okay. Mr. LaFleur.
Yes, sir.
Kevin. Your organization is approaching its 20th anniversary. Congratulations. That's next year.
Mm-hmm.
What are some of your current and some of your future projects that you're involved with?
Well, some of our flagship programs right now is a conflict resolution course that we teach at the National Defense University. We're working on a peace corridor between India and Pakistan. That's a religious corridor, allowing Muslims on both sides of the border to observe a certain religious site that they otherwise do not have access to. We have some water programs in the works. Karen can talk about Three Rivers Project, which is just starting out, but we have high hopes for.
We have the corridor for the Sikhs in Punjab, and the 1 in a Billion Project too for dealing with climate change. The water things that he was talking about, the Three Rivers Project, is a project where we plan to sit down with water experts from the 7 countries in the Tigris, Euphrates, and Jordan River basins and let them come up with a water usage agreement between them. And the reason for that is because in all the world, countries that have transboundary water agreements, they may not like each other. India and Pakistan don't particularly like each other, but they do have a water agreement about the Indus, and they don't come to military action against one another. So to do this same type of agreement in the Middle East would change the politics of that region completely. And it would probably even diffuse the relationship between the United States and Iran, because Israel would be less an inciter. They would be less an irritant to Iran. To Iran.
Okay.
That's the kind of systems thinking that we try to do. It's not about trying to just directly take on necessarily a specific conflict. It's like, what are the things that feed into this? Where are entry points that we can maybe get into this and change the dynamic without necessarily even having to confront the conflict itself, because the conflict itself is a narrow field. And it's a conflict because they have come down to very limited perspectives of one another. But there's the whole world of other opportunities going on around them, and those things can sometimes, by changing them, the conflict can change.
Are there any other approaches, any specific approaches based on that part of the world and its culture that would be used?
In the Three Rivers Project?
Yes, or how about any other projects? Projects in addition to that, would the same approaches, practices, or theories be used, or would different countries, different cultures have different practices?
Water is such a fundamental issue to human life that's why no countries in the world that have water agreements come to conflict with one another. In fact, that's one of the things about the 1 in a Billion Project that I find incredibly hopeful, is that since human beings have been human beings, they have fought over water. But in modern history, there have been more agreements over water than there have been conflicts over water. And looking forward to climate change progressing, I expect that it will offer the same opportunities to choose between agreements or conflicts. And because conflicts cost so much more, not just financially, but in human loss, it's in the best interest of all the parties involved to come to agreements. So as climate change progresses, it offers us an opportunity to develop new ways for humanity to relate to each other, to relate to the planet. So this is a huge peace-building opportunity. And that's what we're hoping with the 1 in a Billion program to do, is create a platform for worldwide dialogue about how to relate to one another.
Okay. Can you tell us any more about the philosophies of a multi-track diplomacy?
Well, it's the whole systems approach. It's like I was referencing with water in the Middle East. There are a whole array of things that go into what creates a conflict, and billions and billions of options for what they could be, but they narrow down to just a few by the time you choose conflict. The Institute for Multi-Track Diplomacy has broken out 9 tracks that we consider to be pivotal points in things that contribute to conflict and can also pull states, etc., people, whatever, away from conflict. Government being the first, but also there's peace activists, there's professionals, there's private citizens, business, religion, funding itself, and of course the media. You look at Northern Ireland and the way the conflict is literally painted on the walls in murals. Well, if those murals were changed, would it change the way they relate to one another? Probably to some degree, yes. There's one mural in Belfast where there's a masked gunman painted on the wall, aiming a rifle at Belfast. Well, that looks like a constant threat. If that were to change, it would probably change the mood, or it wouldn't change the conflict in its entirety, but it would be an incremental piece that would change the mood of the people who are living in the shadow of that mural. It's those kinds of things. It's looking at how all of these things contribute to conflict, and if the more things that you can redirect and pull away, the more you can get people to be working across that conflict in peace instead.
And I think the key to hitting our mark on all of those tracks has been a philosophy of IMTD, which is to listen first.
Absolutely.
So in everything that Karen's mentioned with the water program and everything, basic human bodily needs to more social needs such as religious recognition, the ability to express one's beliefs, and to practice one's faith, that we don't know that these are conflict issues until we meet with the people and they tell us.
Yeah.
So another project that we have is working with Tibetans in exile that are in India. A need that the Tibetans expressed was to preserve their culture, which is different from what we previously thought was a primary concern for them. So it's about listening, it's about identifying which tracks can meet those basic needs.
I think that's a terribly exciting program, because by hearing that message, then we are able to develop a direction, not just for, we don't develop a direction for them, but a direction for our programs. We can go back to our funders and say, this is what they want, and this is how we think we can help make that happen. And then they have something to be excited about.
The current climate and culture for multi-track diplomacy with regard to conflict resolution, what should our audiences expect in the 21st century for new developments and things that are going to happen? Well,
one of my favorite topics that I perseverate about is the virtual state, the concept of peoples that are not limited or in any way defined by boundaries, and that would be terrorist organizations, but it would also be the sinking islands that are going to lose their land as climate change and the sea levels rise. It's the Tibetans, who are a people without space, and how do we work with that in a way that, because we've always worked with nations. We've always worked with boundaried states since the Westphalian period. So that's sort of changing, and it's going to be a big challenge in the future, and we have to figure out a way how are people, not just as individuals, but how do they maintain culture, as the Tibetans are most worried about. How are they going to be a people without the land that defines them? And how do we relate to people as a people who don't necessarily have a specific leader that you can identify? So that's going to be a huge thing.
Yeah, I would just add to that the legitimizing of those people, that we don't just look to the governments anymore to resolve conflict, that's almost a final stage, that once the treaties are signed, hopefully that comes after all these different groups have come to some kind of agreement that peace is what they want, and here's how they can achieve it.
Yeah, when peace agreements are the final act, then they're very sustainable. When they are the first act and the people who have to live by them are irrelevant, then they don't usually last very long at all. And so that's our job, is to work from the people up.
And I think you'll see that happen more and more often.
So rather than top to bottom, from grassroots,
Yes, from all these directions at once, and so they're all talking to each other across that conflict until the conflict becomes irrelevant.
You recently had a Institute for Multi-Track Diplomacy summit or forum at the Wilson Center in Washington. How would you gauge the platform as it pertained to its audience? I saw it was a crowded house. Yes,
it was. There were people who couldn't get in the room, standing or not. The point of it was to talk about where we were as an institute and how the concept of multi-track diplomacy has matured over the past 20 years. And we had some really interesting discussions from people like Howard Volpe, talking about the same principles that multi-track diplomacy has introduced and espoused being used in Central Africa, very much to the benefit of the people there. We think it's a highly successful concept, and we keep seeing it proven over and over.
Excellent.
I wasn't present, so I was not present at the event. But just
I was there. It was amazing.
But the outcome, or the amount of people that showed up, and interest of those who were unable to attend, just demonstrated to us how prevalent multi-track is.
Yeah. The 20th anniversary event that we're planning will be the second week of May. I don't have a specific date yet, but that will be open to the public, so watch for the date.
Excellent.
And we're really hoping to have a lot of people come in, give us lots of feedback, give us ideas, tell us where we're right, tell us where they think we're all wet, and that's all fine.
Wonderful. Wonderful. I look forward to hopefully being a part of that and celebrating that success story, and possibly having you back to tell us how things might have changed and everything.
But they change constantly.
Exactly. The wheels have changed.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Well, Kevin and Karen, thank you so much for coming. We look forward to having you back and working together in the future. Wonderful. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Pleasure's all mine.
Thanks.
Thank you. Thanks. We're going to take a quick break, and when we come back, we'll be speaking with Patrick Scullin from the United States Institute of Peace and the Conflict Resolution Program at Georgetown University.
What if a disaster strikes without warning? What if life as you know it has completely turned on its head? What if everything familiar becomes anything but? Before a disaster turns your family's world upside down, it's up to you